Welcome back. In the previous episode, we created a power-up mechanism that gives the player temporary invincibility. In this episode, we will create a cool visual effect for the power-up. Let's start with the introduction. What is a particle system? A particle system is a component that simulates things like smoke, fire, and water by generating large numbers of small 2D images. We will use it to create bouncing water bubbles around the player while power-up effect is active. Right-click the player in Hierarchy and select Effects, Particle System. Rename it as Power-Up Particles and make sure it is a child of the player. As you can see, by default the particle system generates these small blurry white balls. We will modify the parameters and make the effect more suitable to our needs. First, we need to create a material that the system will use. Right-click on Sprites folder and choose Create Material. Materials are mostly used by 3D objects, but also by particle systems. We need to tweak this material a bit. Click the Shader drop-down menu and select Legacy Shaders, Particles, Alpha Blended. Then click on the small Select button on the square which says None and select the Bubble Sprite. The material is now in order. Next, select the particle system again and in the inspector, head to Renderer tab at the bottom of the component. Open the tab and change the default material to Bubble. Looks slightly better, but we're not done yet. Close the tab and head to the top where the main parameters are located. Let's start adjusting them. Press from the small triangle next to Start Lifetime and choose Random between two constants. This parameter controls the lifetime of the particles. Change the values to 3 and 4. Now the lifetime will be randomly chosen between 3 and 4 seconds. Next one is the starting speed. Choose random between two constants to this parameter as well and change the values to 0.2 and 0.8. Next in line is the starting size. Once again, choose random between two constants and change the values to 0.3 and 0.5. Then we will jump all the way to simulation space. Currently, it's set to local. With this setting, these bubbles move relative to the player, which means they will follow him everywhere. I will demonstrate this in play mode. This is not good, so we will change the simulation space to world. I will demonstrate this as well. Now the bubbles move relative to the world, which is more realistic and looks better. Next, we will jump to the Emission tab. Open it and change the rate over time to 25. Then we will adjust the shape. Open the Shape tab and change the shape to circle and radius to 0.37. The shape determines from which kind of shape the particles are emitted from, and thus influences to the direction and the overall shape of the particle effect. Next, we will adjust the color over lifetime parameter. Activate it by clicking from the small white circle next to its name, and then open the gradient editor by clicking the white rectangle. The upper arrows control opacity and the lower ones color. We don't need to change the color, only the opacity, so that the bubbles will fade away smoothly. Select the top right arrow and drag the alpha to 0. Then click at the top of the gradient and change the new arrow's location to 75%. After that, drag the alpha slider to 255. If you accidentally create more arrows, they can be removed by selecting them and pressing the delete key from keyboard. Just 2 more parameters to adjust. Activate the size over lifetime and click the gray rectangle where it says size. You should see a curve at the bottom of the inspector. With this, we can control the size of the particle during its lifetime. Drag the left end of the curve to the top left and the right end to bottom right. Drag from the handle so that the curve becomes smooth, as you can see on the video. Next, we will make some more adjustments. Add a new key by double-clicking on the curve and drag the dot approximately to 0.5 on the vertical scale. Adjust the handles as well so that they are horizontally aligned. When you're done, create a new key, drag it to the top and align the handles horizontally. After that, create a new key again and move it slightly below 0.5 on the vertical scale. Align the handles horizontally like we have done before. And then create the final key and drag it slightly below the top. Align its handles horizontally as well. And finally, select the ending key and adjust the handle so that the curve comes down smoothly, as you can see on the video. Great! Still 1 parameter to adjust. Head to Collision tab and activate it. Change the collision type to World and mode to 2D. Awesome! The particle effect is now done. Before we go to code and make it work with the power-up, let's adjust its position a bit. Change the position on y-axis to -0.55. We also need to disable the emission as it will be controlled by code. Okay, now we can start coding. Open the player script. First, we need a variable. Write public particle system powerup particles. Then we need to store it into this variable. Insert function, write powerup particles equals to get component in children, particle system. This command will search the particle system that is attached to a child object. Next, locate the powerup function. Here we will control the particle system's emission. But first we need to create a variable that stores the emission module inside of it. Under the powerup timer, write var emission equals to powerup particles dot emission. var is short for variable, but it doesn't indicate any specific type. In C#, it can be used only when the variable is given a value instantly. The value defines the type. Also, var can be used only inside of the function scope. If you try to create a variable using var outside of a function, it won't work. But let's move on now. Next, we need to enable the emission. Under the emission variable, write emission.enabled equals to true. And naturally, we need to disable it as well. We will do that after 10 seconds have passed. So, under powerup activated variable, write emission.enabled equals to false. Okay, this should be enough. Save the script and return to Unity. Make sure that you have disabled the emission from the particle system. Then hit play. Wonderful! The particle effect activates when the powerup is picked and shuts down when the slider reaches its end. Exit play mode and select the player. Apply the changes to the prefab. That's it for this episode. Now we have visual effects for the powerup. In the next episode, we will create a high score system that saves the highest score in an external file, and the application will remember even after shutting down. Remember to save the scene. See you in the next episode.